Hi, my name is Kate. I'm a poet and a writer, but in my day job, I'm actually a hiring manager. I've just been sitting here going through resumes and resumes. I've been doing resumes. I read resumes is basically like half of my job right now. Reading resumes, running interviews, and I just felt like maybe I should sit down and do a really quick video, kind of an informal video about writing resumes, because it's clear that either they don't teach this in school anymore. When I was in high school, we had to do kind of a class on both resume writing, and they also had us do mock interviews. And it seems like they don't do this anymore. Like maybe this is just like one age group didn't get this kind of experience because of the pandemic or something, but it really seems like this must be something that's not taught anymore. So I just want to go over a few quick like do's and don'ts, because I read a lot of resumes and there are ways to make your resume stand out and ways to make you kind of an auto exit out of. So let's just go over a couple of things. The first thing is, it's really obvious when you use ChatGPT or another AI in order to make your resume. They have very standard styles, and it's not like it's a problem. If you choose to use AI to write your resume for you, you must go back and check it. Because if you don't, there's a lot of fill in the blank places that it is just painfully obvious that you didn't even take the time to review your resume, that you simply plugged it in and sent it. There are a lot of errors that way. There's a lot of things that are already super repetitive. Like there's just certain wording that's like, you obviously copied and pasted this from somewhere. If you're going to go that route, you need to go in and, I'm not even saying personalize it for sure. This is your resume. Like this is you putting your best foot forward, but just simply read over it and make sure all of the correct blanks are filled out. That would be step number one. You really don't need that, but if it feels like it's a good structure for you, great, and then work it from there. One of the things that seems to be, either it's because it's how you plug it into these AI generators for resumes, or else this is something someone told you, but putting in skills is kind of annoying in most cases. So like, I don't need to know that you know how to use Microsoft Word. Like I don't need to know that you have good communication skills, unless you're going for a communication based field. And then in what way are your communication skills good? Like this would be a lame one, but really proficient in writing professional emails, like something like that. Like if you put Excel in there, it needs to not be that you know how to like plug numbers into Excel. Like you need to be able to create your own spreadsheet that does work, that does calculations. Like you need to be able to manipulate Excel. Your skills might be necessary is if you're going for a higher level cook job. I'm hiring a lot of cooks. So something like, if you have really proficient knife skills, if you can saute, if you are a saucier, like if there are certain skills, if you know how to make pastries, like there are skills that then, if they pertain to your field, are really, really necessary. But don't just put in just like random things. Like don't try and impress people with your communication skills, that kind of thing. Like if you're a friendly person or you're a people person, that's not that helpful. Like you're applying for a front desk position, you better be a friendly person. Like you're applying to be a barista, like you better have good people skills. But on the other hand, if coffee art is something that you've been trained in, that's a really good skill to put on your resume. The other thing is, please put your most recent work experience first, unless it is not your most relevant work experience to the job. If you're applying to be a server, for example, and your last job was a front desk position, maybe put your last server position first and then chronological order. But don't make me scroll down from like 2011 or before that to find your most recent work experience. Most recent on top and then chronologically backwards from there. Much better. If you are applying for something like a management position, you really need to have a block of text explaining from your previous job what it was specifically that you were doing that was a managerial or a supervisory task in that job. Like exactly what were you doing in that job? There needs to be a block of text explaining your job. If you're applying for like a housekeeping position, if you just say you were a housekeeper and then what place and what dates that you were a housekeeper there. Like if it was from July of 2022 till April of 2023 and it was at the Hilton Motel in, I don't know, Bozeman, Montana. I don't even know if there's a Hilton there. I just made up someplace. That's all you really need for a job like that. Like if I'm hiring a housekeeper, I kind of know what a housekeeper does. If there was something very particular to the place that you were, that you did, maybe add in a little sentence or something about that. But unless you're going for a position that then is like a skilled position or a managerial or supervisory position, you don't really need to have like that block of text. You don't have to describe what a housekeeper does if someone is hiring a housekeeper. However, if you were a line cook, that is a skilled position. And what things did you do on the line? Were you just stuck on the grill all day? Like, were you just grilling burgers? Or was there something else that you did? Were you also helping with prep? Were you also training under training to be a sous chef? Like, specific things like that can really help you in getting the job that you're interested in. So it really, really depends upon like what kind of job you're going for, like how in-depth your resume needs to be. But it needs to have information on it. Like, don't just say, I worked these types of jobs between these dates at various places. Various places, that doesn't help me at all. Like, it needs to be somewhere that if I'm like, hey, is this a real place? I can just search the name and find, yes, it is a real place that you could have worked at. Otherwise, if you just say various places, your resume is getting thrown out, okay? I think people have this like fear that AI is taking over looking at resumes. In my case, in my job, AI is not taking over looking at resumes. However, it would help in a lot of ways for it to screen out certain things. For example, people who don't have a resume, if you send in an application and I have no work experience from you, I don't know if you're qualified for the job. And so because I look at like 100 resumes a day, I look at thousands of resumes. So if I don't have anything from you, I'm not going to call you for an interview. If you're not qualified to work in the United States, in the job field that I am hiring for, we can only have workers who are already legal to work in the United States, which means without a visa, or have a very specific visa that's the only one that we work with. Like if you have an H-2B visa, if that's necessary for you to work in the US, we do not sponsor those, and so that would be an instant out. That would be a really good thing to put on your resume. If you require a type of visa in order to work, put that right at the top, put that in your application, because it saves me time, it saves you time. I know that I can't take any employees who need that type of visa. And so if we get all the way to the interview stage and I love you and we want you, and then find out, oh, you can't work here, we can't sponsor that type of visa at our job, you've wasted the time you could have been finding someone who does sponsor those visas, and I've wasted the time trying to find an employee who we can hire. You know, on the other hand, there are certain things you should not have on your resume. Unless a job specifically asks you to have a photograph of yourself, do not include a picture. And there's a couple of reasons for that. At least in the US, HR and hiring managers are trained to avoid biases. Like there's obvious biases. Just your name can create a bias for someone. We're actively trying to not be biased against someone, and that's biased against their, race, ethnicity, gender, age especially. But if you put a picture on your resume, people will create unconscious biases without even knowing it, without meaning to. And you want to avoid that. Like, you don't want me to look at your resume and be like, oh, this is an old guy. Like, maybe I'm not trying to not hire old guys, but I'm already thinking, oh, this is an old guy. This is a position where we have mostly young workers. They're not going to fit in with this team. Like, I'm already thinking that, and I haven't even interviewed you. You could have been perfect for the job. Like, don't create those unconscious biases for someone unless the job specifically asks. And really, most jobs should not be specifically asking for a photograph. It's going to be something where your appearance isn't necessary. Like for a modeling job, obviously you have to put a picture with that. But for, again, like housekeeping, why would a housekeeper need their picture attached, Unless they're trying to get away with something that's not necessarily HR approved, you don't need to have a photograph. You shouldn't put a photograph on your resume because you want to avoid giving people an unconscious bias. Really, what you're trying to do when you send in a resume with your application is just give them more information about you, specifically what experience you have previously coming in. Again, I look at hundreds of resumes. I might have 100 resumes for servers. So people who have worked serving, specifically serving, not like bartending slash serving or barista slash server, something like that, or like fast food or something like that. If you've worked the type of serving that we do at the location that I'm hiring for, that's going to put your resume into a different category from someone who has not done that type of serving. And if I have 100 resumes, those people who have worked the type of serving that I'm hiring for already, who come in with that skill set, they're going to be the ones that I call for the interview. And if I get through all of them, then I'm going to be calling the people who didn't have that same skill set. If you have done a similar type of job, make it clear that that's the same type of job, that you've already done this kind of thing. Again, if I have 100 resumes and I have 8 spots to fill, I'm going to call the first 20 who actually have done that kind of job before. And if I get 8 out of that, then I'm not looking at those other resumes, or I'm tossing out those resumes because I have other resumes from people who do have that skill, who do have that experience. A resume is not necessarily like you telling me about your personality or anything like that. Like, I'll learn that in an interview. It's you telling me what skills you have to bring to the table, what experience you have to bring to the table, what you previously have done in the past. And if you have no experience whatsoever, that's okay too. It's pretty obvious if you're young and inexperienced. For one thing, people who've been working for a longer time, like fully grown adults, people in their 30s and above, don't put anything about their high school on their resume. Most of the time I can tell if like your high school GPA is mentioned, I know that you're young. I know that if I need someone who's 21 or over in a position, that you may not be the right candidate for me. If you have your college GPA, that might be something that, marks you as younger also, but it might be something that's relevant to the field. If you have been to a culinary school, that is a good thing for if you're a chef, right? If you did go to a culinary school, you don't necessarily need to put your GPA onto a resume. Like, for me, that wouldn't necessarily help. If you are going for a higher field, if you had a master's degree or something like that, definitely include additional steps on your resume. Don't put something that isn't beneficial to you. You don't have to put everything on your resume. You can even have like gaps in your resume. Like, you can just have big holes where like you don't put a couple of jobs down because they're not relevant to the field. Like, you were a server here, you did a couple other things, you were a server over here, it's been like a 5-year gap. You can put in those jobs on the resume, and then they can kind of see like what is your wider range of skills. You don't need to, and then that would be something that if I'm interviewing you, I would be like, hey, what is this big gap? You can just be like, that wasn't relevant information, but these were the things I was doing. And again, if you do have like a 5-year gap or something like that where you were doing things, I would just put it on the resume. I would put down everything unless it was something so different. Just make yourself look good. Make yourself look the best you can. And that really mostly comes down to like, just read over your resumes, people. And if you are trying to get a job that is higher than, what would normally pay close to minimum wage, if you're trying to get something in more of a supervisory or managerial role, you need to, or even administration, you need to have specifically listed like what things you did in your previous job, like what was the skill set that you had. That then makes it so that this is something that you can do, so that I'm then interested. But you don't need to be listing just like a list of skills. And if that's just something that like ChatGPT is doing, just take that part out. Like, just cut it out of there. Make your resume, even if you're using a generator to create it, like, just fix it up. Make it look a little bit more like you did it yourself. Because when you do it yourself, that also stands out. Do try to keep it professional if you're doing it yourself. If you're doing a front desk at like a nice hotel and you have an anime character on your resume, people will be a little surprised. So you probably aren't going to get a phone call in that case. Like, try and tailor it to the type of job that you're going for, and try and tailor. It doesn't have to be like, oh, your company is the best company. You don't have to make it like your cover letter where you're just kind of bleeding out your soul or whatever. And cover letters too. I'm gonna be honest, I don't always read them. I only read them if I have already liked the resume and decided that I might be interviewing this person to try and learn more information about them. But cover letters I'll read the same. And I think it's because they're all also auto-generated, unless they're for a higher position. But for the most part, for like a, let's say, grunt level work position, I don't need a cover letter. And I really don't need one that reads exactly the same as everyone else's cover letter. And most of them do. unfortunately. Like if there is relevant information about you, about why you want to work this specific job in this specific place, that's good information for me. That's good things to have on the resume. A little bit more about you, that's all fine. If a job requires a cover letter, try and lean towards those things, like why you specifically want to work there, what your specific skill sets are, why you're a good fit for this specific job at this specific place. But if they don't require a cover letter, and it's not for something, if you're a manager role, you need to have one. But if it's not for a manager role, maybe just don't include one. Please don't include one that's just a ChatGPT insert. Like they really do read all the same. There's certain like taglines. So it's like clearly someone said you should have these kind of words. So a lot of times I'll just be like, okay, it's another one of those, and I won't be reading them. Unless, again, there is relevant information, and then I really enjoy those. Just know that even if a real person is reading your resume, there are a lot of things we look for. Like if I'm reading 100 resumes a day, I'm scanning through them pretty quickly. I'm looking for certain things. Certain things are going to stand out. Having done your resume yourself and not having put into an AI generator is going to stand out. Especially nowadays. It's pretty obvious. Clearly and concisely listing your experience, clearly and concisely and in reverse chronological order, listing what you've done. Really, really helpful so that I can scroll through your resume really quickly and see whether or not you're a yes or a no, basically. Am I passing you through to my pile that I'm then going to consider for interviews? Am I tossing out your resume because you're just not going to be a good fit? I'm doing that really, really quickly. It's not always AI that is going through and doing that. And sometimes when AI is going through and doing that, it's because it's looking for people who have sometimes specific skills, sometimes specific experience. A lot of times are you even qualified to work in this country? And if you're not showing that that's a yes on your application or your resume, it's out. So this was supposed to just be a quick thing. Hopefully this is helpful for someone. It just seems like no one's telling you guys this. And it's not just young people, it's not just old people. There are a lot of resumes that just, it seems like the information must not be out there. So like, please refrain from putting your pictures, edit your resumes, put your best foot forward so that you can potentially get the job that you want. And just know that a lot of people are applying in the same fields. And it's not necessarily a reflection on you if you don't even get called for an interview. It could just be a high volume of resumes are coming in. You should still give yourself the best chance to stand out. Yes, that's all for me today. Good luck. Good luck in finding a job if that's what you're currently doing. Bye.